The first episode of It, Welcome to Derry, wastes no time setting the tone with racism, secrecy, and unseen evil brewing under the town's polished surface. Among its most gripping moments is the late-night attack on Major Leroy Hanlon, a decorated Air Force officer and grandfather to future Losers Club member Mike Hanlon. Three masked men break into his quarters demanding military secrets, but their motives remain disturbingly unclear. Was it espionage, racism, or something even darker hiding beneath Derry's history? Today, we'll dive deep into Leroy Hanlon's story, the twisted events surrounding him, and what this terrifying encounter could mean for the series ahead. Let's begin. Who is Major Leroy Hanlon? Major Leroy Hanlon arrives in Derry with all the weight of an Air Force veteran on his shoulders. The first episode of It, Welcome to Derry, introduces him as a Korean War-era pilot who's been reassigned to the new Strategic Air Command base just outside of town. He's quiet, disciplined, and visibly aware that he doesn't quite fit in. From the moment he steps off the plane, he's treated differently by his peers. We see Leroy walking into the hangar, standing among white uniformed officers who offer polite cold stares rather than greetings. He meets General Francis Shaw, who tells him his mission will center on a top-secret bomber project, the B-52. Then, later that night, the show throws another layer onto his character as he's attacked in his own quarters by masked men demanding aircraft specifications. Paulie Russo bursts in, helping him fight them off, but the moment lingers. It shows that Leroy's coming to Derry not just to fly planes, but to step into much darker terrain. The small-town veneer may look normal, but for Leroy, the danger is already in his bed. This setup makes Leroy more than just an outsider in Derry. He becomes a hinge between military secrets, personal history, and the town's hidden horror. Leroy Hanlon's role in Stephen King's lore. Major Leroy Hanlon, portrayed by Jovan Adepo in It, Welcome to Derry, is more than a fresh character. He's a vital bridge between Stephen King's It novel and Andy Muschietti's movie universe. Longtime fans will recall Leroy's brief appearance in 2017's It, played by Stephen Williams, as Mike Hanlon's grandfather, the man responsible for raising him after tragedy struck their family. The prequel series expands on that legacy, transporting us back to the 1960s when Leroy was an Air Force major stationed in Derry. The show positions Leroy as a man of principle, balancing military duty and fatherly responsibility while confronting the twin evils of racism and secrecy. In King's book, Mike's father, Will Hanlon, witnessed the burning of the Black Spot, a racially motivated attack by the white supremacist group known as the Maine Legion of White Decency. The series reimagines that harrowing event, shifting the perspective to Leroy, who experiences its horrors firsthand, making him a stand-in for Will within the cinematic timeline. Through Leroy, Welcome to Derry grounds its supernatural terror in real-world horror, exposing how hatred festers in ordinary men as easily as it does in monsters. His story redefines Derry's evil as something systemic, not just something hiding in the sewers. Who were the masked men, and why were they attacking Leroy Hanlon? The attack on Leroy Hanlon is one of Episode 1's most puzzling beats. Three men in pilot-style masks break into his quarters in the middle of the night. They demand specifications for the B-52, they get violent when he refuses, and they leave quickly when Paulie bursts in. This is the basic on-the-screen facts. From there, we can build a few grounded theories, each tying into the show's two main threads: Cold War secrecy and Derry's homegrown ugliness. Espionage and Cold War agents. On the surface, the demand for B-52 specifications reads like classic espionage. It's 1962, the B-52 is a strategic asset, and leaking its specs could matter to any foreign intelligence service. So, one plausible reading is that these men are spies or contractors working for a foreign power. The pilot masks would serve two purposes. They hide identity and they psychologically unsettle their target, making a military man more likely to freeze or comply. If this was a spy operation, it went wrong. Leroy resisted, and the intruders left fast once they realized the element of surprise was lost. This theory fits the era and the ask, but it doesn't explain why they picked Leroy specifically or why the scene carries the almost ritualistic feel that it does. A test? a cover-up, or internal silencing. Another plausible take is that the masked intruders are actually domestic, possibly linked to military or intelligence channels. With this theory, they might be conducting a test of loyalty or attempting to intimidate Leroy into cooperation. The presence of top-secret work and Leroy's status as a black officer living in the Jim Crow era makes this a charged option. We have to remember how institutions sometimes weaponize secrecy and how men of color were vulnerable to both explicit racism and to being scapegoated. If this was internal, the masks give plausible deniability. The attackers can be portrayed as external, even if they are men in uniform or connected to the base. That would be a brutal, very human kind of horror that the show is clearly interested in exploring. Human servants or cult actors connected to Derry's evil. Then there's the darker, supernatural angle. Derry has a long history of people being manipulated by the town and by the forces underneath. We know from the books that groups like the Maine Legion of White Decency carried out violent racist attacks. The pilot masks in the show could mark a cult or a secret cell who served the creature by sowing fear and removing individuals who threaten its operations. In this reading, the demand for B-52 specs is a red herring. The intruders ask about military secrets because it heightens the stakes and terror, but their real job is to mark Leroy, to test him, or to abduct someone for ritual purposes. The way the men move and the unnatural calm with which they execute the break-in gives this reading some weight. A symbolic reading worth noting is that the masked men might be less literal enemies and more of a visual shorthand for Derry itself. The town hides behind polite faces and institutions while performing violent acts masked as order. The men could stand in for faceless forms of racism and secrecy, men who attack not because of foreign paymasters, but because the town has always wanted to keep certain people out of power. So which of these bits fits best right now? The espionage theory matches the ask and the period, the internal silencing theory explains the specific targeting of Leroy, and the cult theory ties directly to Derry's larger mythology. If I had to weigh the odds using only Episode 1 clues, I would put the highest odds on the human-driven options, with a possible supernatural overlay. The masked men accomplish a simple goal in the scene. They unsettle Leroy and announce that Derry's problems aren't just in its sewers. They are, for some people, inside every institution. Marvelous verdict! Major Leroy Hanlon's introduction in Welcome to Derry reminds us that the horrors of this universe aren't limited to Pennywise's fangs, they also live in men's hearts. Whether his attackers are Cold War spies, military enforcers, or cult-like servants of Derry's evil, their presence reinforces one chilling truth. Human cruelty often paves the way for supernatural corruption. Leroy represents strength, integrity, and defiance in a world designed to break him. And if Welcome to Derry continues to explore his story, it could reveal how ordinary people become both victims and catalysts in the town's endless cycle of darkness. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Marvelous Videos for more deep dives into horror's most mysterious corners. We'll see you in the next one.